Shit, I'm Cory.
Uh,
Got some sleeper busts, some fantasy stuff that we're going to go through. Review some of the Chiefs' big-time win against Cincinnati. Denver's somewhat embarrassing performance against Steelers. We'll preview Chiefs-Falcons, which I think is going to be an underrated game this week, just based on what the Falcons look like on the road. And then Denver obviously going down to Tampa. We remember what happened last time Denver went down to Florida. We don't want to, can't have that. So let's start with the Shovick sports hits. Let's start with number 3, AU, embarrassing last week. Absolutely atrocious. Dropped to UNLV. Second game in a row, they've outplayed or looked better at times than the opponent. But again, at the end of the day, it's about dubs, and they didn't get it. So that's 2 straight losses. Then, of course, we go on the road this weekend to West Virginia. I know you have some thoughts on what the OC has been doing.
It's not to take shots at the players or anything, but I think we even mentioned it after the first loss. If it isn't working, don't keep trying to force it. We have enough talent to do something else. And for the second straight game, he just kept letting Jalen throw interceptions. Still happier with the play call. Devin Neal had more carries. Also have other running backs where we could have run a little more. It's hurt. Away with it against Lindenwood because it was Lindenwood. Let's not forget we had turnovers in that game too. Play calling got a little better. What the difference between an okay offensive coordinator and just a good or a great one is in-game adjustments. We came out both games. Our first 15 scripted plays, we looked great both times. And then after that, they weren't able to do anything. So I guess it's baby steps, which is kind of unfortunate just given the hopes that were surrounding this season. The fact we're sitting here talking about baby steps towards being okay again. But I also want to make sure we don't overlook the fact that our defense is fucking amazing.
Absolutely.
We can sit here and blame the offense and talk bad about the offense because everyone loves offense, but let's not overlook the fact that our defense has done pretty damn well. I hardly believe that they gave up those drives at the end of the game both times just because they're gassed. Believe in that all you want or don't believe in it, but that's both times. The defense played fine, and then we get up to those, they're on the field 70, 80 snaps when they really no need for it. So defense has played great. The season's gone exactly opposite across the board. We thought we'd be good. We're really not. We had worries about defense. Thought we had no worries about the offense, and that's flipped. I don't want to say all hope is lost because you can still run the table in the Big 12 given the kind of the lighter schedule that we have for the Big 12. So, I mean, you can still run the table in the Big 12 to get to postseason play or the playoffs, but I don't know. It feels like the dark days again.
Slimmer, right? So your margin of error with Illinois was a little bit there. Then you drop a game of it to UNLV. So now it's gone from like blah down to like blah. From there, you do have to run the table. Unfortunately, there are some teams that do look pretty decent in the Big 12. K-State's getting better. I mean, that was expected. Avery Johnson's going to figure it out at some point. If last week was an indication, he's still young. He'll make, decisions in the games that make you scratch your head. But at the end of the day, he can still run the football. And K-State's always going to be known for their defense. So, margin of error is not as big as it was. You got to take care of it, and you got to go week to week. It starts with West Virginia this week. All right, number 2, Shovick Sports Hits. Tua took a massive hit last week. He's certain concussions are, different than, and man, his are about as brutal as, and you never wish that for anybody. But just the fact that when he gets a concussion and what his body's doing, it's 10 times scarier than just a normal, get your bell rung. We see guys who get up and they're woozy, but they get up. This guy, man, I'm not here to say one way or the other if he should be done, but I think it's to the point where he's got to strongly consider doing something. You've seen it over the last few years. You see it again now. I get wanting to be competitive and you want to help your team. But, man, if you're not going to slide and you're not going to put yourself in a better situation, man, you really got to do something.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't think anybody besides Tua really has the right to even mention what they think he should do. And just him playing quarterback, it's literally what he spent it's his dream.
Yep.
So even for concussions, nobody has the right to tell him if he should walk away or not. But for Tua, like you said, Tua's got to do stuff to make it better for himself. It's hard to say, don't be as competitive, don't try to get those extra few yards or whatnot. But at the end of the day, 3 yards on a random second down going to be worth it, So I advocate one way or another, thinking he should hang it up or not. That's completely up to him and his family. Like, it's his dream. It's what he spent his life doing. At the end of the day, he's smart. He's smart enough to know what he should do and what he can do. So we don't like seeing it from anybody. Always seem like his concussions are just the worst version of a concussion. I mean, gets knocked out, starts throwing up the gang sign with his hands. I know there's a medical term for it, but I'm not medically smart. So gang signs with his hands is the term I'm using, not to try to make a joke of it or anything, but that's what it looks like to a dude with no knowledge. Just want to just hope for a speedy recovery. Hope everything's okay. Just hope that if he does decide to play again, maybe he decides to go with that guardian cap to see if that helps. A few defensive players across the league, and I think a running back here or there, but
offensive lineman.
Maybe that's one of the. Yeah, maybe it's one of those where the NFL steps in, like, hey, you don't have to wear it, but once you reach confirmed concussion 2 or 3, you have to wear a guardian cap or something. So I'm curious to see. Sit back and say the league doesn't take this shit serious, because they do. You can tell by the rules and all the staff they have on sidelines and stuff. Like, good comes of this even for the NFL. So I'm curious to see what comes of it. It's one of the worst injuries at this point. I mean, I say you'd much rather break your leg or something, but
probably would.
At this point, give me a broken leg a time or two instead of just all these concussions. But I feel like we could have a whole 3 or 4 episode stretch just talking about concussions. So with that, I just hope Tua is good. Hope he recovers. Really, all I feel like I have the right to comment on it.
Yeah. Good luck. Another K-State guy.
Fucking
right. So let's move on to number 1, Shovick Sports Hits. We haven't talked about him much, but 10 games left. Royals hanging on, 93% chance making the postseason. Granted, they're 5-5 their last 10. Still sitting with a plus 100 run differential. That's basically they've scored 716 runs. And they're within that range that we talked about before the season started. We said that they could be a 70 to 75, but we would probably put their, peak right at the, 80 to 85 mark. Cleveland's at least kind of struggling as well. So, there's still hope on that. But at this time, you control your own destiny. At this point, I wouldn't worry about the division. Win the goddamn games and keep yourself in the wild card. I get it. You lost Benny, but you have 2 teammates who have over 100 RBIs, Sal and Bob. I know Vinny's a huge loss to the lineup. Tommy Phams looked okay. Kobe and Shaq are feeling really good right now as well. But the bullpen's got to figure it out. Your starters continuously go 5 to 6. Hello. You got to find those guys in late inning. I know MacArthur just got hurt, and they shipped him to the IL. But hey, it's 10 games, and you have a lot to still. You can still fuck around and not make the playoffs.
Yeah,
go ahead.
They definitely blew the Tigers. At this point, it really is. This last stretch of games, it really wasn't a race, but now it really is a 3-team race. For the final 2 wildcard spots. A series up against the Tigers really made it a race between the Tigers, Royals, and Twins. You don't have that much margin for error. I'm actually a little bit more nervous now those games. As you get to this point in the season, your organizational depth is really what gets challenged, and that's never really been the Royals, even in that little stretchy years they had when they went to back-to-back World Series. Like, organizational depth was never a strength of theirs. They were able to pull off some trades to help the major league roster have that ammo. Didn't have that ammo. They did what they could to add what they could. At this point in the season, it all comes down to your organizational depth, and honestly, that worries me a little bit. So, pitching has still been okay, and still, but I know you mentioned margin of error for KU, but after the last week they've had, their margin of error is just as slim. I don't know if they have series left with the Tigers or Twins, or if we're done with the division, but the tiebreakers roll out either. But it's legitimately a 3-team race for those final two wild card spots now, which is unfortunate because a week ago we kind of had the number 2 spot locked up.
You go 8-12 in that 20-game gauntlet, which that's kind of what we were hoping for. 8, 9, 10 wins at best amongst the 20 teams that were obviously in postseason contention. You find a way to squeeze out good wins and maintain that balance, but then you come back and you completely shit down your legs. So yeah, I mean, like I said, 10 games. That's 10 games that you can still fuck around and find out. I'd rather you not take care of business tonight. At least get one against the Tigers, and then I don't remember who they have next. I believe it might actually be I don't think it's division, but I guess I can pull it up. But either way,
yeah, that's what
I know that you end this.
Oh, we got the Giants at home.
That's right, Giants at home, because it's the last homestand.
We got Giants at home, and then at Nationals, and then at Atlanta. So you don't really want to go into that Atlanta series because Atlanta's going to be in must-win territory too.
Excellent situation.
Yeah, honestly, they are. Yep.
Sports hits. Again, those are the 3 big stories from us and what we bring to you guys each and every week. So then now let's do a quick little dive. I believe we went 1-1 in our sleeper and bust picks. So I will let you kind of dive into yours because I believe you went undefeated this week.
You damn right I did. Sleeper pick was Mike Gesicki. I kind of did a Bengals theme with mine, but I went with Mike Gesicki, given the fact they were playing the Chiefs and still down T. Higgins. But I believe he ended up having like 7 catches for 91 yards, 90-something yards, 16-point-something fantasy points.
Well over his projection.
Well over. So, listen to us, and you decided to roll the dice on Mike Gesicki as your tight end. You're welcome. It's actually both weeks I've nailed my sleeper pick. Maybe I'm on a little roll with sleepers, but my bust pick was Jamar Chase. My only reasoning is I'm just not a fan of his at all. A really good reason. I think he had 4 catches, 35 yards, which was also well below his average, well below his normal top 10 receiver projections. And
4 catches on only 5 targets. That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, when you're the only receiver out there and the other team has at least one corner and we're not afraid to clamp them down on you, it is still, I mean, I don't like Jamar Chase, but he is still Jamar Chase. Be fine. He's not my next sleeper pick, but he is playing the Commanders, and he's not someone you'd bench anyway, but one of the guys who at the end of the year his numbers will almost always be in the same general area that they always are. And to enjoy his bust week being against the Chiefs and me being right about it. So I like the guy, but he is still an elite receiver, and his numbers will probably, barring any missed time, his numbers will still be fine. Are usually kind of a slow starting team anyway. I think they were showing Joe Burrow's record in September, and it was dog shit. But then almost every year they kind of turn it up, and I just imagine all their numbers will turn with it. So no need to panic. As Chiefs fans, just enjoy him kind of sucking and costing his team with a 15-yard penalty, which has nothing to do with fantasy, but I just wanted to throw it out there. So 2-0 with Gesicki as a sleeper and Chase as a bust, bringing me to 3-1 overall through the 2 weeks.
My bust from last week, who actually turned the way the game started, it actually looked like I was going to be kind of spot on. Baker threw an early interception. So I picked Baker Mayfield to be the bust. I thought just going on the road, I thought he was going to come back to reality a little bit. But then the fourth quarter happened, and he turned into Lamar Jackson all of a sudden. A couple of those big runs. He even shimmied
Bro,
he shimmied
it was like a
somebody.
mix of Lamar Jackson and like Mike Allstott all rolled into one runner. It was glorious.
What is this guy doing? So he finishes the game 12-19 for 185, but he throws a touchdown, and then he has 5 carries for 34 yards and a touchdown. Again, he was over his projections, so I take the L on that one. Okay, cool. I mean, he still didn't look all that great in the first half, but I guess at the end of the day, it's about fantasy and putting up points. He did.
But it's kind of like that Anthony Richardson one of mine. He looked like ass week 1, but at the end of the day, his fantasy numbers were still startable. So that's kind of where Baker fell for you this week.
Yeah, and Pollard, he had 17 carries, 62 yards, but he also had 5 catches for 40 yards. Finished above projection, so we do classify that as a dub. Titans are a couple shitty Will Levis plays away from being 2-0. But again, we won't dive too far into that because that's not part of this segment. But I like what I see from Tony Pollard. Keep your eye on him going forward. I think both those running backs in Tennessee, they have some promise. I think Pollard's still RB1, but I know that they're trying to incorporate Spear a little more. I think he had a little ankle injury last week, so I think they might be working him back. But either way, so that puts me at 2-2 overall on the season, and obviously a game back now. And we'll give you guys our week 3 sleeper and bust at the end of the show today. Anything else you want to talk about as far as fantasy goes for week 2?
It's been a wild fantasy season so far. Like just in general,
Injuries.
You have that, and then you have the Saints coming out looking like world beaters. People were hesitant after week 1 because of the Panthers, but they go on the road at Dallas, which is supposed to be a competent D at least, and do the same thing to them. So now it's kind of like, well, are we buying into the Saints? And then it's not really who people thought. People thought Olave might be the only fantasy relevant one there, and you have Rashid Shaheed just catching bomb after bomb. You have Alvin Kamara looking like Sean Payton Alvin Kamara, so
and show disrespect to Alvin Kamara.
It's wild. Now, I partially was there. Sometimes people are a little overvalued due to name, and I thought that's what he was heading into the year. Like, people still thought this was going to be like 2016 Alvin Kamara or something, which I didn't think was going to be I still thought he was going to be good because he's Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
My one note on it is, it may not last all year, but hell, right now, enjoy that. Especially since scoring is down across the league.
It's brutal.
I think I saw a stat where through the first week or 2 weeks, there was like 68 passing touchdowns, and that was down like 20 or 30 from last year alone. So scoring is down, but passing in general is down as far as scoring goes. It's made for a weird fantasy, and then you pair that with what you said, injuries have been awful. It's made your draft that much more important just because usually waiver wires aren't as deep as you'd want them to be, but a week or 2 away of this continuing to certain people we've probably never even heard of, where we're like, oh shit, this is who's filling in for him? Well, I guess I'll give him a whirl. So it's been a rough fantasy year through 2 weeks, honestly. Down, injuries up. It's been tough. So nothing to say, like, it's still just all luck. Hope the luck goes your way and you can avoid the injury bug as much as possible. But I don't know, fantasy's been wild.
Yeah, and those of you that don't usually do the waiver wire, now you got to do the waiver wire. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. So week 3, Eagles and Saints. That's a very winnable game for the Saints. It's at home. So, again, Eagles look like kind of dog shit. So I like the Saints.
Can we talk about them for a little bit?
What
happened to them?
It's got tomorrow's game. Won't pay too much attention to that. Jets Patriots. What you got Sunday? You got 2-0 Chargers against 2-0 Steelers. Chargers all day. And then you got the 2-0 Texans versus 2-0 Vikings. That should be fine. Hopefully Justin Jefferson's healthy. My lineup needs him. And then the Ravens Cowboys. So someone's either going 0-3 or 1-2. That's a road game for the Ravens. So, but I guess at that point it didn't really matter. The Cowboys just didn't look good at all. A sneaky good one could be the Cardinals Lions, 1-1 matchup. That's the Lions going on the road. And then again, man, give me that Chiefs Falcons Week 3 Sunday Night Football being a sneaky game. Falcons are 1-1. Chiefs obviously 2-0. Both teams kind of looked average the first couple of weeks. I still think the Falcons could have did a little more, maybe been 2-0 and beat the Steelers. But again, you got to block TJ Watt. They didn't. So let's dive into the Chiefs a little. We'll kind of talk about their Bengals game, and then we'll dive into their Falcons game. So a couple things about the Bengals game. And I think it obviously comes back to fantasy relevance too. Chiefs offense has kind of looked struggling a little bit. Patrick probably had one of his worst games throwing the football, which makes it even crazier that they still won this game, because we can sit here and talk about, hey, their offense is going to look better than last year, when in fact it really hasn't. But here they are, 2-0. You lose Pacheco. That could be huge. Now you're asking maybe a Carson Steele or Samaje Perine. I know you guys signed Kareem Hunt. Let's give the defense some love. I still think the cornerback 2, CB2, something to keep your eye on. That's Bengals exploited that matchup. They wouldn't, McDuffie. Where was McDuffie? Let's throw opposite of that. That's kind of what the Bengals were doing, which again was why Gesicki got involved. Then some Io this guy gets 2 touchdowns. So kind of give us your recap and what you kind of saw from the Chiefs in week 2.
This is the offense I expected from the Chiefs. Still think they look a little better. But I think I've mentioned it before. They kind of just coast through the regular season. They do just enough to kind of make sure they stay at the top or near the top. Echo one hurts because I don't think it means we're going to have someone fill in. I think it just means we're going to throw more. Still run the ball with somebody occasionally, but we're not going to have a running back get 12 to 15 carries like Pacheco was getting. Honestly, well, I guess we'll get to week 3 after this, but with the Bengals game, you're spot on with, honestly, every corner after Duffy, 2, 3, 4, 5. For the reason I thought Gesicki would go off. Chiefs don't have the coverage linebackers. Pretty good safety play. Coverage safeties don't have good cornerbacks behind McDuffie, which usually leads to the tight ends, running backs getting their due in the passing game. I think we did just enough to win. He asked, we really won because of the refs. How you want, it's whatever. But looked how I thought, coasting, doing enough to be in games and win games, but not really going all out. 2-0, and Kelsey probably, I don't even think he has like 50 receiving yards on the year.
Yeah, 1 catch for 5 yards.
Yeah, so he really hasn't done anything. I do think Rashee Rice, barring any kind of prison time after the season, like he could actually be a good superstar receiver, working his way towards that. He still got a little work to do. Brown being out for the year, that one does hurt. A lot more on Worthy and Sky Moore and Justin Watson, and that they can't do it. We may do with it last year. Pacheco being down Hollywood Brown, I do think that adds a little more pressure. Guys we weren't really hoping to put anything on, so I still think Chiefs are fine. They'll be fine. They'll win most games or be in most games. They'll find a way to help them win an extra 4 or 5 games a year. So, yeah. So, they'll be fine. No reason. I mean, we've looked kind of dog shit, and we're still sitting at 2-0. Defense, they'll have it figured out by midseason. Even the years we didn't have personnel, Spags figures it. He figures it out. It might be a little bumpy till we get to that point, as we've seen already, but Spags will figure it out. So, Bengals, just from their point of view, they'll be fine as well. It started early. Joe Burrow actually looked a little more crisp than the week 1. You got to think they're not operating full strength either. brand new running back room, down T. Higgins, new tight ends, new on that offense as well. So as much as I dislike the Bengals and Jamar Chase and all that, like they'll be fine. They still have a really good aggressive defense. Their division doesn't quite look as tough in the win column as we thought it might be. So, them start 0-2 and the Ravens start 0-2. They're not really in a hole. I believe the Steelers are going to continue their winning ways and run away with it, which I don't. I still think it's Bengals and Ravens division. So, with them having the same record, they're not sitting as bad as it looks. So, as much as I dislike the Bengals, I fully believe we'll see them again in the postseason.
I mean, you need an extra tight end. He's obviously going to be that guy. I mean, he's 1-for-1 touchdown. Feed him.
But speaking of, that's a good thing you brought up. I know we're talking about his receiving touchdown, but he actually came in late in the game to play left tackle. It looks like left tackle being a revolving door of issues this year. All on the rookie. Trey Hendrickson's not an easy person to block. I was surprised with how little help we actually gave the rookie, considering what we gave up for Orlando Brown and everything, and we still chipped with him all the time. But we're letting this rookie go against Hendrickson by himself. That was wild to me.
Yeah.
Still concerning. Like, we're in a division where you do play Khalil Mack, maybe Joey Bosa, depending on what's hurting him at the time. You have some speed rushers for Denver. I'm not saying they're powerhouses, but they are speed rushers. Also have to face Max Crosby.
Who's the division, I believe.
Easily. It's not even close. He typically lines up on right tackle. Honestly, it doesn't matter. He always... Blueprint is Max Crosby beating the Chiefs, then the Raiders might actually have the blueprint because he dominates the Chiefs. I mean, he dominates everyone. But, going back, left tackle looks like it could be something to watch because he did make a change in the middle of that game, not because of an injury or anything, but because of performance. So that's another kind of important thing to watch as the weeks go on.
Well, this week's matchup, the Falcons are an improved D-line, right? They bring in Judon, who had a really good game Monday night. They already have Grady Jarrett's been a mainstay. He's still playing at a really, really high level.
He ain't doing shit, not against our interior.
Well,
it's the rushers you got to worry about.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a new and improved defense for the Falcons. It's week 3, so I mean, they have Justin Simmons too, who's familiar with facing the Chiefs too, so that's going to help a little bit, and I think it's going to help them more than people think too. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to pick Patrick off all the time like he did in Denver.
Doesn't he have the most career interceptions against Patty?
He does. So he's still going to have that experience, and he's going to be able to tell the defense, here's what we're looking for, here's what we notice. And plus, they have a defensive-minded head coach too, he's going to know what to do. It's going to come back of, can the Falcons offense do something? Which I know you have a couple points about the Falcons offense that you're kind of curious on.
If we're going to roll into this matchup, it's actually, I'm a Chiefs fan through and through, but I think the Falcons win this week. Those where I think the Falcons are just overall better than the Chiefs and will finish better than the Chiefs. But we talk about matchups a lot, and that's really what games come down to. And Falcons have exactly defense that doesn't match. Chiefs can't match up with very well. So with my sleeper picks and just talking about the Chiefs, I mentioned we can't cover tight ends. Well, athletically and skill-wise, the Falcons have one of the better tight ends in football. Usage, everything aside, never a week where Kyle Pitts was going to go off. It's this week. Being said, we also don't cover running backs very well. We stopped the run okay so far this year. There's a lot of receiving yards to be had with running backs against the Chiefs. On's one of the better receiving backs, especially with the ball in his hands. I think we match up very well with them. And then there's not just one receiver that McDuffie can just close down. Like Mooney stepped up big time. McLeod stepped up pretty good so far through the first 2 weeks. Drake London, like McDuffie can't cover all three. The saving grace is the Falcons' offensive line is borderline booty cheeks.
Fair.
So the equalizer for the Chiefs is if Chris Jones has a big game, or Mike Dana or George or anyone, but kind of that interior pressure on Kirk is where he gets rattled a little bit. I don't like the matchup of Pitts and Bijan and then having multiple pretty good receivers. I don't think there's a lot of stops to be had, which scenario Chiefs stay in it with the shootout and find a way to win at the end, aka refs. But Pitts and Bijan, they're a tough duo to stop for the Chiefs because those are two things that so far throughout the year Chiefs haven't even been able to semi-stop. With it's in Atlanta, primetime game, coming off a huge win, like that place is going to be loud. I'm not saying it's going to rattle the Chiefs or anything, but it does. Playing in a home environment like that still matters a little bit, especially with young Chiefs offensive linemen. How many false starts are we going to have, or just little things like that. So I don't think it's a good matchup. I think the Falcons end up winning. No reason for Chiefs fans to freak out if or when they do. It's just a bad matchup.
Here before the season, going into a Week 3 preview of the Chiefs Falcons, we'd be sitting here saying it's a terrible matchup. But here we are. I kind of feel like it's almost like the Chiefs Ravens game going to happen all over again. It's a slugfest.
Yeah, it was Justice Hill and Isaiah Likely moving the ball down the field.
Yeah.
And you upgrade Likely and Hill to Pitts and Bijan, come on.
So I think I am going to pick the Falcons in this one as well. But again, it's still hard. It's still the Chiefs. But I think what last week shows is the Chiefs still have a few holes, or they're still young in certain spots that they're still trying to figure out. It's week 2. It's going into week 3. Who gives a shit, right? Like, there's not a right now. We can go through literally all 32 teams and point out what team's struggling with what, and why they're not going to go undefeated. Okay, that's fine. But at the same time, there's some interesting matchups that I'm excited. I want to see how the Falcons kind of scheme up the Chiefs receivers. They're not going to put their linebackers on Rice in the slot. I hope not. But again, this could be a matchup where this is the matchup for your tight ends. This could be nothing against Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons and those guys and their linebackers, but I don't think they're very good with the tight ends, right? Especially when you can. Chiefs have been kind of passing all 3 of those guys out on the field. So there's a lot of things that, need to happen. But at the end of the day, I still think the Falcons do get it done. I don't think it's going to be a huge blowout. I still think it, give me like 21 to 20 or something like that, 21-17 or, 23-20, something small. It could obviously end up being like the Chiefs game last week, 25-26.
Yeah, I was thinking Falcons 31-24. I think Falcons capitalize a little bit with just the matchup issues. I think it'll be a little higher scoring than the 21-20 or something. But yeah, it's not going to be a blowout. Chiefs are too good of a team, too good of a coach, too good of a staff, too good of a quarterback to let a blowout happen. But there's going to be some times where they're just not going to be able to stop the Falcons offense. So I think the Falcons are going to have a little better chance of stopping the Chiefs offense. They have 2 elite safeties, so playing 2 deep is going to be very killer. And honestly, that's kind of what killed the Eagles towards the end of that game. But the corners, they have great safeties. They are weak at linebackers, so there is some opportunity there with Travis and the tight ends. But I just think it's too much of a matchup for our defense. So 31-24 Falcons, which is still a good primetime game. So it'll be a good football game. Freak out or hang your head on. So good game, close game, just a little too much for the Chiefs.
And I think if it comes down to it, you trust maybe the Falcons run game a little more than maybe you would the Chiefs at this point. If you need what's the best offense against or the best defense against Patrick Mahomes is keeping him off the field. I think for the most part, the Bengals did a pretty decent job of that. They had 31-28 in the time of possession. So it was fairly even, but at the same time, yeah, give me the long drives and give me Bijan and even Tyler Algier running the football and then being able to do that and gets the play action game going. And that's what Kirk Cousins is at his best.
Agree. Kyle Pitts on some crosser routes on those play actions. I do think that is what's going to be if Kyle Pitts doesn't do good this week, you might as well just chalk him up to not use him in fantasy anymore. Chiefs fan, and I love defense, and I still think we'll be there in the end. But for the life of us, we ain't got shit to cover tight end. So Kyle Pitts doesn't figure it out this week. And again, it's not all Kyle Pitts. They have to draw plays up for him, and Kirk has to hit them. We watched some of the Falcons game. We've seen some of the highlights where Kyle Pitts is wide open, but Cousins still checks it into the stands. Like both crossers where he was open and the ball got batted. So there are freak things that can happen to prevent him from getting the ball, but there should be no issue that Kyle Pitts doesn't have one of the greatest tight end days a tight end's ever had.
I mean, you look at the first two games and what killed the Chiefs is tight ends. So it's not a secret. It's not going to change this week, I don't believe. And that's fine. But like you said, if he can't do it this week, then when is he going to do it?
And you got to think, if I know it, the Falcons know it. Like, it's strictly the reason I picked Mike Gesicki of all people to go off in fantasy. Like, I didn't pick him because I'm a big Mike Gesicki guy.
Huge.
I picked him because Chiefs. Yeah, big guy, big fan. Got a poster of him, everything.
Oh, yeah.
No, you got to think if I know it, teams know it. Bengals definitely knew it. I'd like to think the Falcons know it. So this is definitely a blow up. I can't pick him for a sleeper because he's still projected like top 6 to 8 in every scoring cat. So it'll be a good game. And that's honestly my favorite thing. It's Chiefs in a Super Bowl. I would prefer Chiefs just blowing the team out in the Super Bowl instead of making me sweat all the time. But other than that, I enjoy the good games, and I think we're going to get a good one Sunday night.
Weird to think that it's a primetime game, but at the same time, Falcons get back-to-back primetime games. Well, welcome to Kirk Cousins, right? So let's actually, before we do, there's a couple things with the Chiefs defense. I thought Nick Bolton still looks kind of lost. And then even Drew Tranquill, there was a couple plays where Drew Tranquill kind of just completely busted, which is weird because that's not what we're expecting from those two guys and what they've been able to do. I think last year Drew Tranquill had probably one of his better years, and that got him, that got him paid. But a couple of the key moments for the Bengals, it was Drew Tranquill on the screen that kind of just busted, whether it was a coverage or just a complete whiff of a tackle. So it's week 2. Okay, it's not as, but now it's starting to get to that point where it's like, hey man, we're going to start getting into division games. We're going to start getting into these games against the division winners based on how our schedule's set up. You got to figure it out, right? So it's like, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and let's not overlook the fact that we might end up having the worst linebacking core in football if it wasn't for Leo Chanel. I don't pay attention to PFF grades, and I don't really care what it is. But as a reference, if he's not one of the top 7 or 8 linebackers in football, off-ball linebackers, I'd be surprised. Because how equally bad Bolton and Tranquill have looked, Chanel has looked equally good. But yeah, I understand Bolton a little bit, a little rusty, been injured a little bit, had some surgeries. Hopefully he's just getting some rust off. Tranquill, I don't know. I mean, we play our players in the preseason. I know why we signed him last year, and then why we signed him long term is because he would make the plays that were there. Nothing special. He's not going to go out and have 7 pick sixes or anything in a year, but kind of like Singleton with Denver. Not going to be flashy, but when he's there, he's going to make the play that is right in front of him. And that hasn't happened with him yet. And so you're not wrong. It's a little concerning, and it's another reason why the running backs have had a heyday receiving on us. He's filling in that Willie Gay cover and running backs role, and he hasn't done well at it yet. So you're spot on with that. There's a reason I kind of forgot about it, because as a defensive person, it's kind of been sad to watch.
I think that's one of the key matchups this week. I think is to watch is how do the Chiefs linebackers respond. So let's kind of move on. We'll wrap it up with a little bit of the Broncos. Again, not much to really go into with it. They lose 13-6. Countless opportunities. I think there's room for improvement, obviously. I thought Bo looked a little bit better with some of his throws. We counted quite a few drops while we were watching that hit the receiver square in the hands. I'm not quite sure. I was listening to some Denver media talk about Bo didn't look good at all. I disagree with that part, just because there were countless. Dolchich, for one, had terrible drop. Sutton had a terrible drop on the sideline on a beautiful corner route that he hit him right there. So again, he finished 20 of 35 for 248 and 2 interceptions. The interception was absolutely his fault. You can't throw that football in the back of the end zone. He didn't play perfect, right? But he did play better. He can't be our leading rusher either. 4 carries, 25 yards. That's absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. And it's embarrassing for Sean Payton, who's supposed to be a run guy. I hope they're taking a long look in what they're doing, and they figure it out, because you're 0-2. It's slipping away quick. You're going to Florida this week. You were also 0-2 last year when you went to Florida last year, and we know what happens. I don't think that'll happen this week. If it does, I'll be so pissed. I just don't think the Bucs have 70 points in them. But yeah, so there's not much to really go into. There's not much to go into with the Broncos offense. I will point out the defense. Defenses look good. Now it is the Steelers offense, so let's not get too far ahead of ourselves on this. But I saw a stat today, tied for 4th with most QB pressures is Zach Allen. He's tied for 4th with Chris Jones. So Zach Allen's doing his part. The D-lines look good. Malcolm Roach has done fine. And you still want to tighten it up a little bit on the run game. I heard today that Alex Singleton is probably the best 5 to 6 yard linebacker, meaning by the time it's 5 or 6 yards down the field, that's when he's getting his tackles. Not a good comp, or not a good thing do you want to hear. But then when I hear it and I start thinking about it, I'm like, holy shit, that's actually really good, or really, it's true, because he's not the one that's playing it. He does make some good at the line tackles, but when you think about it, 5 to 6 yards is usually his area. So what is, outside of you hating the Broncos, what was your kind of takeaway from what you were able to see?
Thought outside of that end zone interception, I thought Bo Nix actually looked good. Call me a hater or something, whatever you want. I think he's looked better than Caleb Williams. Even watching the game, there was that bad drop in the middle of the field, and the announcers were like, that was a bad throw. Like, it needs to be a better throw. And then they showed the replay, and the broadcasters were like, oh, never mind, that was literally a perfect throw, and it was just dropped. Like you said, I'm not sitting here saying Bo Nix has looked perfect, superstar, Pro Bowl, whatever, but I don't think it's fair to say he's looked bad. I think he said with the stats he had 15 incompletions, and I would bet that 6 or 7 of them were just drops. Makes his stats look a little better, his yardage look a little better, and that would help sustain a few more drives. I actually think overall Denver hasn't looked bad. I mean, 0-2, but they were within striking distance the whole time, both games. This is going to continue to grow, but I think you hit it on the head. Bo Nix isn't really going to be able to get better and improve until you get a run game. Simple. You can say the same thing about Caleb Williams. Like, until they develop a run game, because teams are making these young quarterbacks beat them themselves, and it's a different world than NCAA. Like, it's different than college football. So these teams should really crack down on trying to get a run game. I thought Bo Nix looked fine. Yes, that one bad decision with the interception in the end zone. One guy trying to force it. It probably hasn't been the smoothest start he's wanted. Trying to force it a little bit. I'm not saying that makes it okay or making an excuse, but like, I kind of get it. Quarterback, he's got to stay composed, but he's human. These drops have got to be frustrating the shit out of him, making him press a little bit more or whatever. But I'm not even saying Denver's going to be a playoff team, but I think there's been a lot of good that's been witnessed the first 2 weeks. In the end, you really only care about wins and losses, but I think I kind of mentioned before that this was kind of a developmental year, seeing what you have year, and if the wins came with it, awesome. Now, I think the running game has to improve, and then you have to get people who can catch the football. Defense has been fine. Sit here and say they're world beaters, but there's obviously worse defenses out there. There's a lot of good with this team. Obviously, we even mentioned with the Chiefs, areas to improve on. It's week 2. Also has a lot of new in their organization as far as locker room, coach, whatever. Growing pains. Unfortunately, it's resulted in losses, but I don't want to say all hope should be lost, reeled in a little bit, but
Yeah.
we sit back and just say, thank God we're not the Panthers. So, yeah. So, I mean, it's not all bad. Like, I still hate Denver, and them sitting 0-2 makes me super happy. But at the end of the day, I still don't think it's been as bad as you would think it would look for 0-2. So,
Over their next two games in Tampa, and then they're in New York for the Jets. So they're staying out there on the East Coast for a couple weeks. I'd like to see them kind of dumb down the game plan a little bit. It seemed like we'd get them on the, when red zone would pop into the Broncos game, it's like hockey shifts out there. Different personnel groups. Like, how are you going to get in a rhythm when you're switching out personnel that much? Wait a few years, let your rookie quarterback develop, and then you can do shit like that. But right now, your run game's ass. Give some of these younger guys. I mean, Tyler Beatty ripped off a 16-yard run, looked good. We didn't see him the rest of the game, right? So it's like, I'm not sitting here saying just completely forget about Javonte, completely forget about Jaleel, but give him a chance to get into a rhythm. You're supposed to be an offensive guy. Scheme some shit up. That's honestly, it's embarrassing for him. But at the same time, maybe he's thinking, hey, I got a rookie quarterback. This is supposed to be my guy. We can just go. Well, now you're learning out the hard way that it's not that simple. Dial back. So that's what I want to see over the next couple of weeks. I want to see him dumb it down, not shifts, keep the guys on the field. And then the second thing I want to see is some more tempo. I really want to see, why has he done so well at the end of halves and towards the end of games? Just because you're going tempo, you're going no huddle. He doesn't have time to think about certain things. It's, hey, get on the ball and go. So do that. That's what he did in college. He's used to it. And I'm not saying make it a full-time thing, but get yourself in a rhythm going tempo. That way you can build some confidence, and then you can start getting into your game plan. So that's stuff that I want to see over the next couple weeks. Will it happen? Probably not. But I hope that they at least, if I can see it, then I'd like to think an $18 million coach and his staff notice that, hey, this kid's really good when we go up tempo and we're giving them quick, easy reads. So again, that's kind of my thought. I don't think they're going to win this weekend. I think Tampa's just a little bit better. Obviously Baker's playing real high right now. I don't like their offensive matchup with our defense, just based on what they have receiver-wise, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And then you can throw in, Bucky Irving and Rachaad White. We obviously can't cover the running backs very well in the passing game either. So I don't think it's going to be a blowout, but I think I want to see more progress. I want to see us get in a rhythm and actually get some touchdowns and quit settling for so many fucking field goals. So give me the Buccaneers 24-10.
I agree. I'm obviously one of, if not the biggest Mike Evans fan in the world. I think that offense.
The Baker Mayfield closet girl.
I've kind of come out of the closet on that in recent weeks. Like, he's thoroughly enjoyable to watch there, but I kind of like what they're doing. A win against Detroit, that's big momentum for them. They get a return home against, no offense, a lesser opponent. I actually do think it's going to be a little out of control. I think Bucks win 38-17. I think Baker. I just think the Bucks in general rolling off this win against that they just had. They're not really going to run into any kind of a force to slow them down this week. 38-17.
Ideally, it's a trap game.
Yeah, no. I feel like I'm being generous with also saying Denver at 17. The Bucks can be. Yeah, the Bucks can be had a little bit defensively. I think Vita Vea is going to miss some time. That's a big one. I think there's some plays to be had against the Bucks, and week 3, a little more comfort. You're a little farther away from your rookie debut as a quarterback. I think they get a little bit of rhythm going. They put a couple. Look, every NFL team will. Even the Panthers at some time, they're going to put some stretches of football together where they look like they're an NFL team. That's just every team does. Even the bad teams, these are still world-class athletes, world-class players. Broncos are no different. So I think they put a couple good drives together. They could even squeak up, 20 points, but 38-17. I also get more than that, but I don't want to be ridiculous. So 38-17 Bucks. But I do think this is where the first game you'll see true progress from Bo Nix and the Broncos offense.
And that's really all I'd like to see. And then maybe by week, 8, 9, 10, then you're really starting to put stuff together, and you're heading in the correct direction. So hopefully in a few weeks we're not sitting here and I'm still not pulling out my hair saying, hey, let's start thinking about Kyle Shanahan. Let's start making that happen. So with that being said, it's our favorite time of the week. It's our favorite part of the show. You went 2-0 last week, so you get to do the honors. Give us your sleeper and your bust picks for week 3.
I'm going to try to refrain from being on players, so I'm just going to throw a little asterisk in there. Anthony Richardson's going to be a bust, but that's not going to be my pick. That's just kind of a shout-out. I'm going to stick with the tight end theme for both. I actually think the tight end bust is going to be Trey McBride. I looked while we were talking, and he's projected to be the number 1 overall tight end projection-wise. So that really leaves me a lot of room for him to be a bust. But I know he's kind of Kyler's guy. Kyler still prefers kind of big plays with his receivers. Him and Marvin got together a little bit. Dortch is still a guy there. Wilson. McBride is going to be okay. I think this week it's going to be a lot more receiver and James Conner than it is McBride. McBride is my bust. My sleeper, sticking with tight ends, picking Kyle Pitts. Smith is who I'm going to pick for my sleeper. He kind of had a coming out game last week. Still a really good tight end. He's just been in a couple places where I guess Atlanta used him more than Kyle Pitts. But out for the Dolphins, I think it's going to be a lot more quick passes, little safe passes for Skylar Thompson, which they'll still do those to Waddle and Hill and Achane and all that. But I do think Jonnu, just by the quarterback change, is going to have 6 or 7 catches for 70, 80 yards, which is well above his projections. So sleeper Jonnu Smith, bust is Trey McBride.
I like that, though. So I'm going to start with my bust. I'm going to go Chris Godwin. I'm not sure how they're going to use PS2. I'm not sure if he's going to be on Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. But I think that there's other options out there that are going to be more beneficial for the Buccaneers, whether that be the check down to the running backs, or it could be either or Mike Evans or Chris Godwin when you look at it. I know he didn't have a very good week last week based on penalties, but Pat Surtain's kind of locked down the first 2 weeks, and he's done fine. Now it's George Pickens and DK Metcalf, completely different than what Mike Evans seems to do. But I'm still going to stick with Chris Godwin as my bust this week. I know the Buccaneers are still going to win, but I just don't think he's going to have a huge say in that. And then my sleeper is going to be Austin Eckler. The usage is there. They're starting. He's still getting the backfield receiving yards. I still don't like that they don't give him as many touches, but there were some runs last week that when we were watching, I mean, he's still getting in there. Obviously, we know it's obviously going to be Robinson being RB1. But with the game against the Bengals, I do think that the best option is getting quick passes out. You still got Trey Hendrickson, rookie quarterback. What's the best offense against that? Get your quick shots. At some point, Terry McLaurin's going to wake up, but this week it's going to be Austin Eckler.
Yeah, and you also have game script. Like we mentioned, Bengals are still a good team. They kind of had a decent rhythm offensive showing last week. So game script could be flipped a little bit to where they have to pass a little more towards the end of the game. So what they have brewing in Washington, I just don't think it's come full circle yet. I like the Austin Eckler pick. Kind of not too much because I am starting Robinson in a league we're in, but Austin Eckler is a good pick. I don't know what he's projected.
Yeah, projected to 8.7 or 8.17 or something like that, but it's low.
Yeah, so I think that's a good sleeper pick, just given how the game script alone could be. But you nailed it. He's looked pretty good too, much as he has gotten. So I think even as the year goes on, he's just overall going to be better do better for them. So I like those picks. I like your bust pick because I have Mike Evans. So if Godwin sucks, I hope that means Mike Evans blows up. So those are bigger names. Pick the bigger names, and it seems like I kind of go with the randos sometimes. So I'm starting to see a trend from us, but at least best part, what we look forward to on the show each week, picking them and then going over how spot on or how wrong we were. So to let us know, leave comments or messages or anything on sleeper picks, bust picks, fantasy football, just through and through. Let's enjoy football a little bit more. So don't hesitate to drop us some sleepers and some bust. And if some are just absolutely spot on, we'll give some shout outs where it's due. So we'd love to hear some fantasy talk from the listeners.
Find us on Instagram at Shovick Sports. Find us on Apple, iHeart, and Spotify. Videos are being posted to YouTube on the weekends. We get the graphics built and put on there, and we get them uploaded. So be on the lookout for the YouTube videos that are uploaded on Saturdays. And like he said, comment, give us who your sleepers and your busts are for the week, and give us the matchups that you're most looking forward to seeing, whether that's NFL. There's some damn good college football on this weekend too. We're really excited about watching as well. We may break some of that down next week if any of those games hold true to form. So until next week, we'll talk to you guys then.